Weekend, John. Good weekend for the bikes.
We were out yesterday on the bikes. Friday night, we're in Portsmouth at Jimmy's Jazz Club with some friends. Saturday night, yesterday was Melissa's birthday, so Saturday night I took her out the mountain.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Is that good?
Right, it was gorgeous.
Start recording.
Good for you.
We had the state fire convention one year on the mountain. We had the state fire convention one year on the mountain. It was nice. Okay, it is 6 o'clock straight up. I will call the Alternative Housing Committee to order. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I do not have any changes.
Then I'll accept it as presented. Okay, further discussion, imagine that, further discussion on the short-term rental zoning ordinance and hand off to the ZBA committee, ZAC committee, pardon me, if ready. Okay, well, I guess I'll turn it over to Tara, right?
Sounds good.
Tara, where'd she go?
So you should have in yellow the changes between meetings. You were okay with everything that's not yellow. And the two things that are in yellow are kind of, because there were different views on whether or not a short-term rental could be in an accessory dwelling unit. I thought it might be helpful to put in a table with the pros and cons as it relates to the zoning purpose. Put the zoning purpose in here. I mean, this is up to you, but it would seem like where you're advisory to the ZAC, who's advisory to the planning board, there are other opportunities to have this policy discussion, and you could, if you wanted, hand it off with this analysis of the pros and cons that you might have things to add to tonight as well, to the pros and cons. I just did this kind of looking at the purpose of the ADU ordinance.
Roger.
So that would be a couple questions of how do you feel about, telling the next group that you discussed the pros and cons and here's what you think they are. And if you are okay with that approach, then do you have any things to add to these pros and cons columns?
Well, big picture, if our responsibility here as a board is to create more housing or opportunities for long-term housing, what we're talking about here with the short-term rentals, this is the low-hanging fruit, folks. The housing exists, it's permitted, it's ready to go, and I'm here, I have a VRBO, but I'm very concerned we're not controlling enough where there's outside people coming in and buying up property. I know people who have 6 or 7 VRBOs. And you can make a killing. I mean, if you have waterfront, you can make your mortgage payment 1 or 2 mortgage payments a week. There's a ton of money to be made out there. And people are coming in and buying it up. And if they can keep on doing it, we're going to run out of housing. We're going to be in worse situation. I just think we got to be careful. We have an opportunity here to control. I think we have an opportunity to control VRBO, short-term housing. Let me use the right word. I'm not sure if there's any legal avenues, but we're leaving a lot of opportunity here on the table. That's my concern.
So my understanding was this committee had already had consensus on that, and the question remaining was whether or not to allow it in an ADU, where you require the owner to live in one of the units. You can't have people buying them up to put on the short-term rental market. The owner has to live in them.
Right, you're absolutely right. I was talking on a larger scale. Perhaps I was too general.
And that, yeah, I mean, that's for you guys to discuss, but there's been consensus right along not to limit. If I wrote amendments for one town that specifically didn't want homes bought up to be short-term rentals, so they put a limit on how many nights it could be offered on the short-term rental market, so that somebody could do it for, they're gone in the winter or summer and be able to pay for that, but to discourage somebody buying 3 homes to put on the short-term rental market, that would be the way to do that if you chose to, would be to limit the number of days.
I have some insights. Earlier, when this committee first formed, I went on Airbnb and I typed in Alton, any date, flexibility, to try to pull up everything that was available for Airbnb. And I counted, I think it was 64 total Airbnb units were available. And that's not including VRBO and Home Away from Home and the other 12 that exist. But Airbnb is the most prominent short-term rental business on the market currently. And I did that again this morning before coming in, or an hour ago. And it's down 13. I counted 49, which I thought was interesting. And I think my own analysis of that is this was a harder year for short-term rentals. Gas prices hit an all-time high in New Hampshire. Inflation rates are up. People are not going on vacation as much this year as they have in the past. I know that'll change eventually, but the market is down, which is interesting. I specifically wanted to look at how many auxiliary apartments were on the Airbnb for Alton. And out of the 49, I counted 5, 2 of which are mine. The third is a friend of mine. The other 2, I don't know who they are. One thing, so I don't think it's, my point in trying to find that number was it's such a small marginal number compared to the overall 100% of short-term rentals. So, from making a decision on the auxiliary apartment, you're talking about a current 5 number in Alton compared to the other 44 that are homes. Anyways, as far as the pros for short-term rentals and auxiliary apartments are, I know for me personally, we have a family reunion every summer, and my parents also live out of state and they visit us twice a year. And having that auxiliary apartment available is really important to me because I have family stay in that auxiliary unit during those times. And I would be unable to do a 12-month long-term rental lease. So even if short-term rentals were to be nixed for auxiliary units, it wouldn't just make my 2 units available on the market because I can't do that in my circumstance. And the other person that I know, who's the third on my list, I know she also has family come visit multiple times a year, and therefore her unit would not be available for a long-term lease as well. So that's just my pros and cons for the auxiliary units.
Some of the concerns that we've talked about, I thought we've had a good handle on resolving as far as in terms of the short-term rentals, in terms of regulating and watching. And one of them being, I know you're concerned with how many there may be. Yes, I have noticed a decrease as well this year in quite a few of the short-term rentals. But in terms of people buying up and buying property and renting them out as short-term rentals, we've discussed having management or people that own it that have to be present. So it's either one or the other. That curbs some of the problem of out-of-staters buying a property. They must need or have to have someone in part of our language to have somebody manage it or be relatively close to be able to manage and take care of the property. The other areas that we looked at were parking, septic system, compliance with safety code, and these certain things are taken care of. And I think we don't want to put too much pressure on the code enforcement officer. So that's why we decided to talk about possibly having the permit process done by the selectmen. So I think in terms of that, it's a beginning. It's a good way to start of how to control and not eliminating it completely. As far as the ADU is concerned, we look at the pros and cons, and I think that's something we need to discuss, and which we are going to, and make a determination whether or not to have both, neither, allowable for short-term rentals, or one or the other at different times. But I think, in my opinion, we can control it. And when it comes to noise, when it comes to trespassing, we already have an ordinance in effect for that, and that's the police department. And when there's an issue, you call the police department and they handle it. Especially if you do have properly signed with no trespassing or anything like that. I think we have to start somewhere.
No, I agree that we've taken steps or made suggestions to address some of the problems associated with short-term rentals, but people need four walls and a roof to live in. And I did mention outside people coming into town and buying up, but I know people in town that are buying up and have 6 to 8 units. If you say you can't be doing that anymore, that's 6 or 8 more units that come on the market. I mean, I'm actually arguing against my position. I have a short-term rental. I'm just trying to put my cards on the table and say, hey, listen, we got to look out for everybody else here. So those are my thoughts.
We also need to look into, which this committee is also doing, once we get past this, is looking into alternative housing as well.
Right.
And into cabin colonies, small housing, and that type of thing to accommodate for that issue.
Right.
For the lack of homes or the lack of affordable housing. That's the next step.
But like Paul said, eternal house, that's the name of this committee. That's where we started.
Right.
With the, we were talking about the cabin colonies and different houses. Then we got on to this here. And it seems to me like we've solved the problem. We've come up with the answers, but yet we're not moving away from it. I mean, you're reading another page here, all the things that that you would have to go through, like the person, the control person. I mean, the place has to, have the smoke detectors. It has to have good water. The bedrooms have to have egress. We got all the stuff. I feel we can move on from this.
That's my point.
I don't think we need to be kicking this can here anymore.
My goal is not to hold up progress.
Nothing says that we can't come back and do it again, but we're spending an awful lot of time in this, and I think we've solved the problem.
I agree.
It clearly may need tweaking after we find there's a couple of holes in this thing. I mean,
But we come here every time talking about the same thing.
The other thing.
So do you want to look at the requirements? I know that John had given me some input, so I revised numbers 2, 3, and 4 here on the requirements on page 4. I had the parking fit your requirements for a residence, and he wanted to see it fit more like a lodging, which made sense. I got some more specifics from him on the septic, and he confirmed what you guys were saying about the water testing being specific to coliform.
In terms of the permit process, once they have a form of this nature and to do a checklist and apply for their permit, the one thing that we need to discuss is whether or not that permit would be for 1 year or 2 years.
So if you want to have another layer of regulations that the select board would adopt those under RSA 4111C, and that's what would enable you to have permits with that time limit on it. A zoning permit runs with the land unless there's a violation. So this part here is more about the structure, the dwelling itself in a zoning like way. And then once this is adopted, so your zoning ordinance clearly allows short-term rentals, then the select board, if they wanted, could adopt some short-term rental regulations that are more about the person, like, where's their contact gonna be, and And that could be renewable 1 or 2 years. But this is a zoning permit and that runs with the land. Like any other use.
Right.
Number 2, again, on page 4, the parking. I remember asking about this last month. The dwelling is served by 1 off-street parking space for each room to be utilized as a bedroom. Does it have to have that, a street parking or
No, off-street.
Off-street parking.
This is such a, okay, this happened last month. Thanks, guys. I'm good.
Okay.
And this is
No,
so-
no on-street parking.
I'm the
No
same
on-street
as,
parking.
I'm the same as I was last.
John?
It says
Can you use your microphone?
utilized as a bedroom. Each room to be utilized as a bedroom, but the question, these places are advertised for more than the bedrooms they have capacity.
But their permit.
We fix that though.
That's one reason you need to get these permits in place.
Right.
That the permit's gonna say how many bedrooms their septic system is approved for, and that's gonna be how many they can offer, and if they offer more, they're in violation of zoning.
John, we made it very clear that we didn't want people stacking them in these places like Cordwood. Like if you go to Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, it's not how many bedrooms it has, it's how many people you're gonna put in there. That's how they charge you.
Right.
So, and we're not looking for that. I mean, I feel we've,
No.
We've kept that
We've definitely kept that down.
Yeah, we've added a stipulation where you get 2 people per bedroom and
plus 2.
an additional 2 total. So if you had 2 bedrooms, you would get 4 plus 2 would be 6. And the plus 2 is for like the floor mattress
Of the
or
hideaway bed.
the hideaway bed.
Right.
But it doesn't allow for a 2-bedroom to have 18.
Okay.
There's a limit.
That's still technically overloading a septic system. If it's designed for 2-bedroom, it's still 2-bedroom, but I feel,
And what do we, and at that point, I'm gonna bring up the point of parking.
right,
You know, my initial comment to Tara when we were going back and forth was 1 per sleeping area plus 1.
that would be perfect.
You know, because you're gonna have, if, okay, we say you got basement room or whatever, and this room and that, that's 2-bedroom, but we gotta have you using this room as a sleeping room.
Mhm.
You
Well,
know,
the tough thing about that, it gets a little circular because if you're issuing the permit for a certain number of people, which is gonna be 2 per bedroom in their DES septic permit, how do you justify asking for a parking space for people you're not allowing to be there?
Okay,
That's not-
that's,
What's
Call
that?
it guest parking.
Yeah,
I think you
because
need
they're
to-
inevitably gonna have a guest. I mean, Uncle
Well,
Tom.
but that guest may be in one of the bedrooms. I mean,
Place for the cruiser to park when he has to.
I can
That's
tell
on
you
the
one
street.
property right now that I drive by every day. House is not 1,200 square feet. There is only 2 bedrooms in that house. And I drove by this morning, there's 5 cars in the driveway. And they've been creating more parking spaces for this particular property
Mhm.
all along. And this is on a lot that's not a 1/4 acre, and the house is probably 40 feet from the lake.
Right.
And that house just sold for $1.2 million in January.
Whoa.
So, yeah, they're getting their money out of it.
Sure they are.
So that, again, we can't nail down everything, and there's what ifs and look at this, look at that, but I think if we're gonna nail it down, we have to, this is a good way to do it.
Mhm.
What do you think of this in general? What we've,
I think it's, there's, because I did make inputs to Tara, after the meeting, I did tell her some things that I had thought we should address. Most and all of which she has added in here. But I have a quandary with the ADUs,
Mhm.
and I could see both sides of the argument, and of the concerns, and I don't think there's a good answer, honestly.
I don't know if you can pull,
And yeah.
you can't deny them for a general, like you say they want to use it for whatever the personal reasons they are. What can stop them from triggering it into something else? I think that's gonna be
Yeah,
really
it's-
almost impossible to monitor.
Possible.
I mean, and honestly, the economics of it are, it's much more profit, as I understand it, it's much more profitable to use it for short-term rental than it is for the long-term rental.
Absolutely.
And,
Sure.
you know,
It's more work, but it's,
it is more
it's simpler to manage because the people are gone in case you get someone who doesn't, you know, have a problem. So
Mr.
that's
Chairman,
it.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're not done.
Okay.
I've got a comment here. And what is considered off-street parking
On their property.
on their property?
On their property.
Okay, not on state
Not on somebody
property.
else's property, their property.
I understand your question.
Yeah, I do too.
And the state, as long as you're not blocking the state's access, they don't care if you're using their right of way to park, which is very common.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, you cross that bridge and go down through there. Very, you know, they're lined up all along the road in the right of way, edge of the right of way.
Do you, let's say on site,
Yeah.
On
Okay,
site,
yeah.
yeah,
On
yeah,
on site.
that's better.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think this is, it shouldn't say for each bedroom, each room to be utilized as a bedroom. It says, it should read each permitted bedroom. I mean, you gotta, you know, the property records tell you how many bedrooms you can have. That's pretty easy to look at.
Yep, that's not a bad point.
It's not a bad correction.
So,
yeah, there's some reason that we did that, and I'm not stuck on it, but I think it was because you may have something that's normally a den, but it's permitted as a septic system, and you're gonna rent it out as a bedroom with a folding sofa or whatever. But
Jessica, you had something you wanted to say.
So if the idea is to allow ADUs to have short-term rentals, then we need to change the section on ADUs.
Okay, good point.
let's finish this for a minute. So you want to say, so we change number 2 to each permitted bedroom, and then we're changing number 3. The number of bedrooms you want to say instead of rooms to be utilized as bedrooms, right?
I agree with that.
Okay, so I know you guys were talking about the purpose statement in the ADU section. I don't see that you need to change it.
You don't see,
Say that again?
I don't think you do need to change it, because you're also saying that it's to provide economic support for present resident families of limited income. So it's still within one of the purposes of your ADUs. It's letting people stay in the homes.
Okay.
That's why I put that there, so we could kind of think about that, but it's still meeting one of the purposes.
So which option is the most appealing?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the hard part. I
Yep.
mean, I tend to go towards number 4.
Okay.
By having only not both at the same time, one or the other. I think that makes more sense.
So is that one, like you're committing to, I'll only rent the house or I'll only rent the ADU, like on the permit, or 1 week I'm in the house, 1 week I'm in the ADU?
Their permit would be for one or the other.
One
Yeah.
or the other.
Okay,
They
just
would
making
have-
sure we're clear.
That's what it's pretty much says here. So that's how a permit would have to read.
Yeah.
It
I
would be
agree.
one, this one or that one, not both.
I agree.
What's everybody else think on that?
I don't
That
know.
way we'll hopefully get some closure here.
I think that's the most acceptable.
I think it's the one that makes the most sense. Is number 4, in my opinion.
I agree.
I think the only problem would be if the house owner was leaving for 2 weeks and they wanted to fill that space. So we're just saying that would be,
No,
that would be a
it
no.
would be, it would be, no.
You're already at the well and dipping.
Right,
You know,
right.
we're not,
It's yes or no. So,
Make your decision which one and
yeah,
live with it.
rent out this one or that one. Which one are you gonna use?
Yeah, and you can change that
You can
up.
Swap it, but.
But
Not at the
that
same
being
time.
said, we've got to make sure that the safety measures are in place
For both,
for both of them at that point.
yes.
Right. So Jessica, do you want me to tweak the language for the ZAC for tomorrow to say that the Alternative Housing Committee is recommending number 4? Do you want me to have all of this analysis gone and it just is number 4?
Yeah,
I don't know, that's up to the
Well,
committee.
it's up to the committee now.
right. Let's just try to land on this, whether number 4 is the one we want, so that way we'll clear this
Yeah.
from us.
Yeah.
Mr.
So
Bo,
Yes.
yes, Paul, you're yes. Sir, Benjamin, and you're yes,
So yeah, I'd be the only one then that would favor a different one. So I'm not voting, which is fine.
You can vote, but just say no if you don't like it. I mean,
Okay, so
it's-
no.
Okay,
Yeah, I like 4.
okay. We're gonna move forward with number 4, Tara.
So then there was the question, do you want to pass it to the ZAC so they see this thought process or no?
I think so. We should, our rationale, we should, I don't know, tell them what our rationale was and maybe they agree with it, maybe they don't.
So do they have anything to do with it?
Excuse me?
Do they have anything to do with it?
Yeah, this is a sub- this is a
They
sub-
can scrap this and start over if they really.
This is a
wish to do so.
subcommittee.
So we're making this for them.
Right.
Right, you're advisory to them and they're advisory to the planning board.
Yeah.
I'll just yellow it then, so it's just part of the thing
Okay,
and get rid of all the yellow. So this will be ready to go.
Mhm.
It's gone.
that's gonna pretty well clear us off of page 3, isn't it?
And then you guys were all set with these changes on 4 going to each permitted bedroom?
3 and 4.
Yeah. One per bedroom plus one more space, correct?
Well,
I'd vote that way.
then you can't limit the people to 2 per bedroom.
Why?
How's that figure?
What's,
Just
all right, I'm not gonna die on that hill, but I think somebody could have an argument.
Because we're assuming best case scenario, there's 2 people per car. And if it's a 2-bedroom house, you could get 6 people. And therefore we would need 3 parking spots. Am I wrong?
Oh, and it's not, I mean, if they want to put 4 people in a bedroom, I mean, 4, they've got, as long as it's a bed, although.
Well, no, the septic systems are designed for 2 people per bedroom.
Correct.
Well, not necessarily.
I'll be honest, I have never had anybody at DES commit to me that it's
Yeah,
Really?
I've never heard of that. either.
never,
No one's
no
ever
one
said
has,
that.
no one.
It's
I've
what
questioned.
it's what the flow is calculated for.
Well, the flow was calculated in 1972. So that was when we had 5 gallons per flush toilet.
And
So
I-
now
and
we
I
have
have-
1.5. So
I have specifically asked, how many people per bedroom? We don't calculate people, we calculate bedrooms.
bedrooms, correct?
Yeah, but if you have the select board adopt short-term rental regulations, you'll want to put a limit of 2 people per bedroom in there. That's how you're gonna not have 15 people in a 2-bedroom house.
Right.
The amount of people.
The only way you can try to control it.
Try to control it. The only way you can try to control it.
Right, that
Right.
really is the standard, two people per bedroom.
All right.
And,
All right.
that's where I'd assume that John is gonna go in and have a look and make sure that everything they're calling a bedroom has an egress.
Okay.
Okay, so that's
Still
number
+2.
2. Yeah, so plus one car. One
Yep.
per bedroom plus 1 car.
So we're saying 2 people per bedroom. We're no longer saying +2.
There we are.
Here we are.
Yeah, we are.
Talking about
That's
the
what I was
calculation of a
asking.
parking space right now.
Yeah.
+2.
I thought you were on the cars. I'm
No, no,
sorry.
no, no. I'm talking- We were saying 2 people
Yeah.
per bedroom.
You don't really regulate the people in the zoning ordinance. You wait and do that through a select board regulation.
Right.
So it's 2 people per bedroom plus 2, so that's 6 people, right?
6 people.
All right.
If
Now
there's
we're
2
looking
If
bedrooms,
it's 2 bedroom.
Right. So now we're looking for 1 space per bedroom and then an extra one. Okay.
That's
So you
correct.
got 2 people in this bedroom, 2 people in this bedroom, and then these 2 people here. So that's 6 people. That's 6 cars.
No, it's 2 people per car.
That's 2 people per, I mean, they could come
I mean,
individually in different directions.
So
This is a minimum, Roger. We got to set a minimum of some kind,
okay,
you know.
all right. So I'm just trying to
If 2
see if
people
we're-
per
see if we're-
car,
see, I'm just trying to see if we're doing enough. By saying, minimum of 3 spaces, because they're gonna come in 6 cars. They're all coming from a
And-
different
and
job.
they will.
And there's gonna be
Coming from
6
different
cars
states.
there.
Like I said, that's a 2-bedroom house down there. There's 5 cars.
My
It's-
couple.
So I
normally
guess we do, if we say off-street parking, it's covered in that routine because,
right?
okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure we were doing enough because 3 cars isn't gonna be enough. There's gonna be more than
They're
3
gonna end up
cars.
being more, but as long as
Just
they're
ask
not
Mr. Bowles.
parking on private property, they're not parking on the road,
Else's property.
hmm,
Yeah.
on anyone else's property. They're only parking on that property. Is what has to be stipulated. Parking only on that specific site.
Right, and that you'll put in select board regulations.
Okay.
Because that's where you can manage the behavior.
John, you know of any, the state rule on what, I'm jumping down to number 4. Because I know years ago, a lot of places pumped the lake or they had springs, and then probably about in the early 70s, the state says, if you're gonna rent, you must be on a well.
Okay.
Do we know what this is? Because on number 4, it says not served by a public water supply, which we know is safe, we think. But, the call form, what does the state have in their rental rules? Because I know at one point, I'll look at Boulder Lodge Cottages on 11D. They had a spring up on the hill that they used for years and years and years, and then the state said, no.
Okay.
So they had to drill a well, which they did do to service the units. So
How many?
they had 10, 12 cottages there
Yeah,
at some point?
I don't know. Yeah, because I know that if you serve, you run into being a public water supply, depending on how many people you're serving.
Right.
Okay, so if you run that, I think it's 25, then it becomes a public water supply. So they would,
Then that
but,
falls under that
and
criteria.
then it falls on the criteria.
Well, even that's probably a little heavier criteria than just coliform bacteria.
Oh, yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's evolved, over the course of the years. But in this case, I don't think we can say, I don't think most of these places are going to end up with a well. They're not going to use lake water. That's
Right.
just not going to happen anymore.
Right.
You're never going to get a clean water sample, a potable water sample out of a lake anymore. So even if someone comes in and says, look, I want to, I'll use the lake. And then the argument would be, well, what if I put in a filtration system or this or that? But I think the straight up needs to be from a.
Well, they could put a chlorination system in, but then you ask them for the test about
Yeah.
coliform bacteria, and if it
Right, we
comes up
still have to
negative,
have that
then
test.
we're happy.
Wherever you're getting your water from, we got to have that test.
Yeah, okay, I will just leave it at that.
Yeah, and I
That's
think
just-
I think
yeah.
that's best to leave it at that.
Okay, any further discussion on 4?
Or I have just a question again on the number of people per place. I just had an idea. On the Airbnb website, it says, I picked a house and it says this place has a maximum of 10 guests, not including infants. And it says infants are under 2. Do we include infants or babies?
We're not talking about the number of people here at all. That has to wait and happen if the select board adopts regulations. Separate regulations. You can't manage the people through the zoning ordinance.
And usually an infant is classified up to 12 months.
It's the select board regulations where you can say 2 people per
what-
bedroom plus 2.
EMS people say if you're 12 months or less, you're an infant. After that, you're a toddler.
But we're giving them recommendations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
would we recommend including infants or not including infants?
So you're on the you're on page 5, I see,
I don't know where I am.
Oh, you're jumping up ahead.
where we give them some recommendations, like maximum 2 guests per approved bedroom plus 2.
Yes.
We're gonna say not including infants or babies, or we want to include them as, so what does it say, people?
I don't think I've seen any that exempted kids, but I don't know. I haven't read them all.
2 per bedroom plus 2, and that's it.
Okay,
It would be, that would be going forward to the select,
okay,
as far as the permitting process, not for the ordinance.
okay, we can leave that then.
Okay, Tara, what's the next one you want to attack?
So the next thing was the flexible zoning.
Actually, if we can hold back, I got a comment on number 5, the hotel and motel definitions. I'm not sure if they have them in Alton. I know of one in Guilford where they rent them out as a regular hotel during the summer months, but then they go to 9-month rentals in the winter months to students.
Yeah, they can.
Do we
be
need to
on
change our definitions for that, or we don't,
that
not concerned about it?
served By a public water.
Because that makes some sense.
The rest of them are private. And those-
I don't know, because I had 2 conversations. It's hard.
I'm sorry, I'll give it, I'll try and be succinct. The definition for hotel and motel, I know of a place in Guilford, I don't know if it exists in Alton, where they do the short-term rentals for the summertime, but in the off-season, they do 9-month rentals. Do we need to
Yeah,
change?
we hadn't really talked about changing the way hotels and motels are used or characterized. All I was trying to do here so far is make the definitions consistent with each other. I just happened to notice they weren't.
My opinion, if it's a 9-month, that's a long-term rental, and that's not the gist of what we're going here. I mean, you would
I
have the
agree.
personal
Yeah,
property.
we're not
to rent that
changing.
For 9 months if you want to.
I
We're
agree
not-
about definitions. I don't know if
Okay.
we can just ignore it if we want, but I'm just saying that that does exist out in the real world. Do we want to incorporate it? If the answer is no, I can live with that.
You have something else. Let me just look at your use table. You have something else that would fit under. Like a, I don't know, law, do you have anything like a boarding house?
Yes.
Just not finding it real quick.
Yeah, there's a lodging house.
Lodging house? We're not seeing it, but somehow
John's gonna go look.
lodging house or bed and breakfast. It sounds like they're using a little bit more, using the hotels like a lodging house, but we weren't changing that. I was just I just noticed a couple of mistakes in your definitions while I was working on it.
I didn't mean to sidetrack us. Sorry about that.
Well, that's never a bad thing to toss out an idea. Okay to go to the other? So the flexible zoning, this would be your first look at this. And I have a few things in here for you. I have the recommendations from the master plan. It's a working draft right now. It will go on to the planning board in October. But these are the recommendations in it here in number 1 in your flexible zoning handout that are why we're talking about
Roger has it.
the flexible zoning.
I have one.
And then I gave you a first draft to talk about here
I need to go back to it.
with a lot of things that you guys need to talk about and fill in.
Sure, of course. Hold on a second. Yeah. There's a few more questions, Tara, on short term. So if we can hold off on that page real quick. Mr. Bobby, you had a question?
Yeah, number 1, I need to go on record and saying I oppose short-term rental in residential areas. Residential area to me means a neighborhood or a series of neighborhoods. And those people that come and go every week are not neighbors. You know, they're not people you socialize with. It's just, I think it deteriorates the whole effect of having a neighborhood by having that.
So I can piggyback on that. That's actually the one lingering thing in my mind as well is, we do have different zonings for reasons. We've talked about that. And I don't know how big the residential area is in Alton, but John had mentioned that early on.
Not big.
I'm personally okay with keeping residential and not having a business in that. And Tara, I remember you personally thought that legally we couldn't do that, but my thought was, let's ask a lawyer and see what the lawyer recommends.
Yeah, no, I didn't say that, and I don't like being quoted as giving legal advice. What I said.
I'm sorry, I thought I was quoting you correctly. I apologize.
No, and I don't think I said it that way because I usually am careful, but I think you'd have trouble enforcing it politically. I think you'd have trouble telling somebody in one part of town that they couldn't put their house on Airbnb when everybody else in town and the rest of town can.
Well, we don't have any problem telling where people can have businesses or certain occupations. That's the point of zoning.
Yeah, but their whole, it's another use of their home that's already there is why, it's only my job to help you think about the pros and cons and yours to set policy. So if you want me to put an N in there in residential, that's my job to do.
Well, we have a lawyer we can talk to. Is that what I heard? Or?
No, I don't question the legality of it. I don't think you're gonna run your zoning amendments by town council anyway. I don't think this is a special question hanging out there.
Go ahead, John.
No, we have an attorney, but at this point, I don't, I'm still not in favor of having the residential zone. Again, we create a neighborhood, we create whatever, and it's not a big zone here.
It's tiny.
We're nuts. It's tiny,
Tiny zone.
very tiny. And so,
Does anybody want to have it? Everybody's saying they don't want to have it. I agree.
Do you want to have by special exception only or no?
not in the residential
No.
zone.
Yeah.
And that was been my feelings.
And the residential zone is so-called thickly settled. I mean, it's established.
It's not a big zone.
And it's established.
I have a few other.
Let's get through this first. Do we want to put a no in residential?
Want to vote?
I think my problem is I don't know what the residential zone is. I don't know who's there. I don't know what type of living is there. So I don't feel as I could vote either way.
Well,
So you'll
the
have to-
school's in the residential zone.
Church Street,
Church Street.
Church Street,
part of,
school.
not all of Church Street, the first two houses on Church Street are both residential commercial. Then you switched right at Hampton's property becomes residential zone back in there, and it zigs off around the post office
In the back of that property.
in the back of that, and then Barnes Ave and there are considered residential.
Mhm.
The houses on the other side of the cemetery,
I think they're RC.
yeah.
I think
So we do,
Mrs. Sanborn's house,
the majority of downtown is RC.
and it's only a small strip.
It is only a small street.
Is it RC that you don't want to have it in or? Is
No,
it residential?
No, just plain
Residential.
residential.
Residential only, which is what we're talking about.
RC would be
Downtown.
fine because that's a commercial use, residential commercial, so.
Well, I mean, if residential is so small and there's only a few houses, why bother even limiting it? I mean, is it going to be that much of a problem?
I think we're thinking the opposite, just more of a, because
Because you come back to what Tara says about, you're telling these people, everybody else in Alton can do it, but it's up to you.
One house on Church Street and the neighbor can, and then the next house
That's where I'm
can't.
going with that too.
Because we're also saying residential can't have a hotel or a town community shop or all these things, right? We've already created restrictions, just not this one.
Right.
There's already restrictions for residential.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one you need to protect the most, because
No, I'm not in
that's
favor of it.
strictly residential. You know, I mean, someone can have a home office in there, but
you could rent your house out long-term.
correct.
Yes, anyone
Just
there
not
long
short-term.
term is fine.
Do we know if there are any other businesses or anything else going on in the residential zone that we're speaking of? Not that you know of.
No, not that
It's
you know.
strictly
There's an Air-
homes,
there's an
strictly
Airbnb.
residential, not small.
Is there
There's an Airbnb in a residential zone.
residential? Okay, I don't know of any.
There is.
Which one is it?
So if you have an ADU in the residential, can you rent
115,
that out?
Not Major Highway.
You could rent it long-term unless, if, with this as a yes, you could rent it. If it was a no, it would be a long-term rental only available.
Or is 115 Mount Major Highway residential zone?
I don't think so.
It's got to be out of it, right? You were saying it's just a small area here in town.
Right, it's pretty much town.
It's just what's downtown here.
Oh, no, 115, 117.
That is, I think,
Lakeshore?
that's,
Isn't that
which side
Lakeshore
is,
Residential?
Which one? You talking about the motel there? Across from you?
Right, no, on
next door to you?
next door.
Okay.
On the left side of Route 11 as you're going north. The first house over the bridge.
Right, that one, yeah,
Bill O'Brien's house, which is right behind that, is 117.
those are, that's
That's a
those are part of the
residential
residential zone.
Yep. And the houses back across Spring Street are residential.
Yeah, the Chris Conference Center is residential.
Isn't that also the same area where all those cabins are?
Oh,
for
are they
rent?
residential or
Rented.
rural residential?
That's,
Those are all the cabins right there, right?
that's residential commercial.
Residential, commercial.
Yes. And so is the lakeside of Route 11 there, right after the bridge is
Lakeshore Residential.
residential.
So now, those people are already have it there, so even
They're
if you
established.
change the zoning,
They'd be
you can't
non-conforming.
change it on them.
I was not aware that was a residential spot
Yeah, I was thinking just
The-
downtown, like TD Bank area.
right here.
Yeah.
Zoning is or permissive zoning. It tells you what you can have. It doesn't tell you what you can't have.
Well, if it's not there,
And it's.
It has to be on the list.
And right now, right now, it's not on the permitted list of things. I mean, when you buy property, I guess you should know those things.
Well, that's true and it's not, because, and that's why we're gonna clean up some of your definition. Because your definitions aren't necessarily clear enough right now to say that you couldn't have a short-term rental. So whether you consider the existing ones non-conforming or in violation or what is gonna be something you need to work closely with town council on if this passes.
Well, I'd like to make a statement. As much as I'm against the short-term residential, short-term rentals in residential, if that is struck down, I've got to look at the other side of it too. The town is going to face one hell of a lot of litigation over these things. So do you zone it and say you can't do it, or do you control the hell out of it? I don't see anything being controlled in town. I don't know how you can control it. You know, you talk to the police about trespassers, they say, well, what do you want me to do? Go arrest those kids? No,
They have to respond by law.
they have to say something to you. That's all they have to do.
They have to show up.
Uh,
They're supposed to.
No, they don't.
Well, they're supposed to. And if there is an issue, then call the selectmen.
All I'm saying is who is gonna enforce all this stuff? John, there's no way in hell John can enforce all these things, but we have to have tight control over it. How is he gonna control how many people are parked out in front of a place? Man, that's a full-time job.
Yeah, and it's on the weekends when he's not here.
So the other towns I work with who've adopted this and then adopted selectmen regulations, and they've sent letters out to owners that they know have them because they've looked on things like Airbnb. They're getting really good voluntary compliance with the permits.
If the majority are complying, then it's like any other thing. It's the minority that's creating
Right,
issues.
And this is how, and these two steps are how you get a handle on that.
I mean, I'm fond of saying that 5% of the people create 50% of my work. You know, the same faces. So, and that's human nature.
Well,
That can't be changed.
There's a couple other items I'd like to bring up if I may.
Sure.
Was there
Let's
consensus,
settle this, yes or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah, I agree.
consensus that we're changing that to no, right?
No or yes, in the residential zone.
I think it's gonna cause problems if you say no.
Raj?
I'd have to go with yes,
Yes to,
to allow it.
To
I mean, if
allow
it's
it.
there,
okay, so 2 yeses. Mr. Bober? Think I, no. Paul?
For the same purposes, I have to say yes, because I feel as though if there's even one person doing it right now, it'll be an issue. And I think that'll become an issue. So I think it has to be a yes.
I agree. I think the selectmen's regulations that they impose can probably tighten it up as much as we possibly can, and I'll be a yes as well. And
I'm a no vote.
I'm a no.
I'm a no.
I'm a no, but I don't count.
Yeah, you're the tiebreaker, so it will be no.
I honestly, I don't think it should be allowed in the residential zone. No other bed and breakfast, lodging house, motel, hotel.
We need you
right?
that one.
So like, none of that is currently allowed in the residential zone.
That's a really good point.
That point should have been
Yep.
brought up
That's what I
earlier.
stated many meetings ago.
Okay,
No, so it's no.
Mr. Bober, next thing.
Next item. Okay, how many short-term rentals does a person or a corporation have to own before they're considered a business? And how many, and how does that affect each one of these rental properties as a business?
I don't, everyone could be its own business, so I just don't
I
think
think if
that's,
you're not living there at all, it's a business.
it's a business.
Yeah.
How does that change?
Yeah, and you aren't allowed
Doesn't
to,
make any difference if you're sewing mittens. Business.
And the
you
business,
aren't allowed to regulate how many somebody can own.
you can't.
You can't regulate that.
No,
Well, was that your point?
yeah, no,
I mean, as far as, asking how many before it's a business?
yeah. I mean,
One.
I think you
one.
stated that there were people from out of state that had 5 different rental places.
I know somebody local who does, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
But then again, it controls it if we have it, so that it has to be owner occupied or manager.
and a lot of times people will have their own LLC for every property they own. So if this one trips and gets a bloody nose, you can't sue you and take all of them. So everyone would be a standalone business.
I guess
The
that
answer
was
to your
more of a
question is one, I
rhetorical
think.
question.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
one or more.
we've already hashed out the number of bedrooms, the number of people can sleep there. But how many people can come there during the day that aren't going to sleep there that night? How do we,
Can't
We
regulate
have
that.
no way to control
how do you
that.
control the big parties?
Okay, there's where you gotta draw the line. Because does anybody control you when you have a party at your home?
No, but
Residential
I
home?
don't have one every week.
What I'm saying is, that's getting down to the point of controlling each and every home. If this person has a party, you could have a neighbor right now that's there full-time, no rentals at all.
Yeah.
And it looked like a dump, and people there every single weekend, and there's not a lot you can do
Yeah.
about it other than go to the zoning officer and have them try to clean it up. But
I
they
guess maybe I have an answer to my own question. If you've only got 1 car per bedroom plus 1, if you've got 3 permitted bedrooms, that allows you 4 cars. That's it. So that
No,
regulates that.
If they've
doesn't it?
got space for them on site, there's nothing I can't go in and say you're only,
so,
I've got
but there-
nothing to back up on that says
Yeah.
you're only allowed to have 4 cars on site. If they've got 8 and they're all on site,
You gotta at least.
but there is a way around that, and that would be in the select board regulations. There's language that I put in Gorham's that I saw it in somebody else's and I liked it, and it basically said if for guests otherwise causing a nuisance to neighboring properties or the public, 3 incidents a year, and then they don't get their permit. So that's what I mean about being able to manage the behavior with the select board
And
regulation.
we've talked about that before, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what,
Take it away.
I can't come up with a word. What is a problem?
What's a nuisance?
What's a nuisance? I mean,
somebody-
that all depends on the guys next door, the car. What's a nuisance to him? I mean, what's
Yeah.
the tolerance?
Well, if
Yeah.
there's people trespassing on your property and there's people going on your property and the police have been notified several times over and they've
Violation.
come over in violations.
Of-
At that, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Go ahead.
At that point, that's part of the permitting process by the selectmen. If this is being violated and the police department notifies the select board, this has happened 3 to 4 times. That's when the permit process, either they get fined, we come up with a fine, the first one, second one, by the third one, the permit gets pulled for a year.
Right, and I wrote that with the police chief. He felt the language was.
It is defined what a nuisance is then. I mean, it's not just the neighbor calling up.
Well, I think it's an extremely gray area. I mean, after 11 o'clock at night, it's kind of clear because it's a noise ordinance at that point.
Noise ordinance.
Yeah,
you know, you
so-
have, you know, that type of thing, those.
Now you're
types of-
playing baseball and the ball goes out of you, goes 10 feet into the neighbor's yard.
And
you
I
not
understand
get your ball?
point. You know, some people are that, but I mean, it's reason. The legal term is reasonable, which is, I don't want to say it's a legal term because how the hell do you define reasonable to one person or the other? But, you know, you would base it on, you know, number one, are the cops there? You know, do the neighbors call because they're out there fist fighting in the front yard, roll around screaming and yelling, drunk as hell? You know, are they setting off fireworks at 2 a.m? Are they, you know, the things that you would, if you live next door to someone who lived there all the time and they did the same thing, are the cops there? You know, do they have to come and break up the fights, haul people off, you know, whatever, you know, or parking, you know, if they're violating the parking and then someone complains, says, look, you know, they're supposed to have 4 cars and they've got 8, but 3 of them are in my yard. That's an incident. In regard, once we get that nailed down in the regulations, that will be an incident that they could consider because it's very specific about the parking. You know, it's going to take some,
It's gonna take.
there's
time.
still more work. This is the basis. Now we've got to put the rest into the regulations for the selectmen.
To fine
Why don't we
tune
just
it.
tell them
At
they
least
have
it's
to
a
have 5
beginning.
acres?
Huh?
Why don't we just tell them they have 5 acres?
So I
At
think,
least it's a beginning of the draft work to begin the process.
Yeah.
To have something that can actually tangibly be started to be controlled.
This will use as the base for the selectmen's regulations.
Right,
so I think I understand what you're saying on a little bit different twist than what's been here, and I think I have a potential solution even better. So I think as a short-term rental owner, what I have seen on my particular property is somebody will rent that because it's waterfront, and then all their buddies will get 5 houses in the back lots or in the campgrounds. So they all filter around and they hang out there all day long, raising noise, overloading the septic system. I think that's the concern you're raising. Is that correct?
Pretty much.
Okay, so one option there, and I don't know if it belongs in zoning or selectmen regulations or doesn't exist or can't be done, but there's a checkbox when you sign up for short-term reservation, for short-term renters, do you allow parties? So when
Right.
grandma turns 80 years old, do 25 people show up, which I've had happen to my neighbor where I live over in Wolfboro, and you know, grandma at 80 doing lip sync at 10 o'clock at night is not pretty. So I don't know how you can control that if at all, but I think the big parties and all the friends from the neighborhood coming down is what causes a lot of problems. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Well, whether they're friends from the neighborhood or they're friends from their hometown or whoever they are.
Right.
Yeah, but you said you had a solution, didn't you?
Well, my solution, you're right, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. When you sign up as a short-term rental, I know for VRBO, that's where I'm listing, there's a checkbox, allow parties, don't allow parties. So when they're looking for grandma's birthday party location, this won't come up because you're not allowing parties.
Each short-term rental agreement, you set the rules, the manager sets the rules, or the owner sets the rules of what should be done. If they're not followed, and if it's been a problem with the police department and it's been documented, that person can be told, don't ever come back.
So they can be told, go now.
They leave now. They vacate the premises.
Right.
So they have that control. And that's something that the selectmen can make sure that this is enforced.
Yeah,
That if there's an issue and you've complained and the police department came and they still did this, this is something that where they could be evicted.
Airbnb doesn't allow parties at their listings anymore.
They call it events, and the definition of a party is also somewhat difficult. You can have 20 people hanging out, and it's not a party. You know, it's a weird thing.
Or is it a get together?
Yes. Yeah.
But
Well,
it's-
I don't know, but
it's something we could-
they officially banned parties and events at their properties.
They allow events.
It's
not
but
parties.
that part of it is something that has to be worked on through the regulations. It's the easiest way to manage that.
Once it gets
You know,
through this step and it gets to the selectmen's desk, this can be discussed again with a rough draft for the selectmen to look at and either work with or add to.
Right.
Jessica?
So I was actually just gonna state what Tara just stated, that Airbnb back in 2019 evidently tightened their regulations on allowing parties. And then when COVID hit, they did a temporary ban. So they banned parties altogether.
Mhm.
And because that was such a big hit with neighbors, in June 28th of this year, they put that permanently. So they have a whole, they have a neighborhood support line that you can call directly to Airbnb.
Oh,
and
wow.
report people that are having parties. So Airbnb really understands the
Mr. Bobo
concerns
would like
of
that number?
neighbors.
One problem with that, Airbnb is only one of a dozen
Yeah,
different companies.
sure.
Well, exactly,
Right.
but at least this company is acknowledging
It's acknowledging the issue.
that,
Right.
neighbors like you are having problems and they've created their own outlet.
The
So
people that run Airbnb are making a bloody fortune. They have pretty good reason to control what's going on.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Control is what we want.
And so does the homeowner. They don't want to get kicked off Airbnb.
No, they
either.
don't.
right. And that's
My-
what we'll
my
end up
They want to
having.
maintain a good
My
status.
experience is a complaint to the owner stops right there. Although they say they're gonna do something, why would an owner come over and chastise the people that are renting because they're gonna then give them a bad review? So there's no incentive for the homeowner to,
Well, there is,
yeah,
it'll be, have the board
there
of
is
selectmen. That will be the safety valve.
Right.
There is an incentive.
The renters
They
can
don't
get
want
a
them
bad,
back. They don't want problem people back.
Right.
no, but they don't want negative reviews.
Well, that's too bad.
Well,
Then
that's too
handle your
bad, and
business.
You're gonna get them if you, that's gonna happen.
the other side of that coin is the renter does a review, in a lot of cases, my understanding of the landlord does a review of the renters and said, I don't want these people back again. So when next time they log on to VRBO, and nothing is foolproof, okay? Nothing is foolproof.
If you
But
read,
you rent and you throw a party, trash my place, I'm gonna give you a frickin' no-star review.
Right.
And next time you sign on to Airbnb to rent from Scott, they're gonna say, no, your review, that Scott will know what your reviews are
All right.
Each and
as
every,
a tenant.
each and every person that stays is rated.
And this is not foolproof. You've got Craigslist, you've got other ways that these things are happening. But the idea is to try, to get it aimed at it. It's nothing is foolproof. Nothing is foolproof.
You feel as though it's a step in the right direction, at least to try to help control and regulate.
Absolutely. But I just think the control and regulation is gonna be extremely difficult.
At
Of
the
course it
beginning, it
is.
will be.
We don't have enough
You know,
around here.
well, the thing about it is too, is once you run a tight ship and they realize it, it's gonna follow itself. Okay, anything else do we have on this? Mr. Bober, you have anything else you wanted to add? You had some things?
Yeah, the methods of registering complaints, I guess, is either with the police or the fire department, whoever's involved, and
Selectmen.
Well, the first call, if it's after hours, would be the police department. I mean,
Yes.
if somebody needs an ambulance, well, then call 911 and they'll send you the right thing.
license revocation, that becomes a selectman's problem.
Correct.
Determine what goes on there.
Yeah, all of those things would happen later in the regulations that the select board would adopt, not in the zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinance violation would be like any other zoning ordinance violation.
I think there should be a pretty good fee attached to the licensing of these establishments. So
What-
they pay for
be-
all the
That's up to the Board of Selectmen to establish that.
Well, within the zoning, it would be whatever your zoning permit application fee would be.
Definitely make the violations.
Okay,
salaries. I've
that's the
I've said
thing.
enough for now.
Okay, anything else on this packet? We'll go to Tara's packet. That way we can move on.
And state law defines what the zoning ordinance violation fines can be.
Yes. $275 a day.
But the select board regulations can be whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Tara.
To
We're-
the- to the
You're on,
next one?
you're on your page now, that number one, where you started, and I pulled you back from that. I apologize. There you go, I think.
So the actual draft starts the bottom of page 1. I put some language in there for you to think about, and I highlighted with bold italics things that you need to discuss. Obviously, you need to discuss all of it, but there are things that you need to plug in that aren't there yet. So the intro kind of piece would say you could do this in the residential rural zone and rural zone, because your lot sizes are just too small everywhere else to provide flexibility.
And we have Lake Shore Residential Zone, which is a small lot as
Yeah, a lot
well.
of them are small.
Right. Then I put in the purpose to increase the diversity of the town's housing stock and protect all of these resources that are highlighted as important in the master plan. And then you would need to decide what's the minimum size parcel that makes sense to give someone the flexibility to concentrate the homes in one corner or on one side. And they may have a shared, I have a plan on my desk that has homes that are sharing, they each have their own septic tank, but they're sharing leach fields and they're sharing wells. So that's one way that can work.
We have several of those in town presently.
Yep.
And I thought where your minimum size is different for the rural residential and rural, that the minimum size for a flexible subdivision plan might also be different. It might be, 5 acres in the rural residential, but 10 in the rural or something like that. Or you might not require a minimum. That's up to you.
Well, I think one of the things that's going to be necessary here is the last time we talked about quotations workforce housing, I think we had inventory that would fit the bill. I think currently, it may change, but currently we cannot fit that bill. I mean, if you can find something that's quite affordable to buy, it's gonna be tough. And so the smaller lot size, changing the density, shorter, smaller road frontages. And I don't think that needs to be carte blanche. We need to have it available for people to use.
Yeah.
But I think if changing a carte blanche would be probably a little bit detrimental to our tax base, probably. I'm not sure, because residential housing is not a good business venture for a municipality.
Right.
I mean, if this costs too much, I think it used to be 1.2 children per home attended the school. So they're $13,000 a year or something like that per child. So multiply that by 1.2, and that's a huge number. And say you pay $3,000 or $4,000 a year in taxes, the math doesn't work. So that's one thing we've really got to be careful about, because the school is our biggest anchor on the tax base. Just naturally it is. So.
enrollment, we just happened to talk about this at the master plan committee last week, that enrollment has been declining, so there must be excess capacity in the school.
Yeah, and it's going to continue the declining enrollment, I think, because people just, there's not having, they don't need a shoe to live in. They just need a couple of kids, but still they're also reducing class sizes. When I was in school, there was 32 or 33 of us in a class, and now it's like 20. So.
And that was the whole class. That wasn't.
That's right. I had a big class, Gerard.
I was 25.
I had 47 that graduated.
I think we had 66.
So that's, we've got to keep all that stuff in mind when we do these things, and maybe if they want to use this, and I'm just throwing out thoughts, if they want to use a smaller footprint or something like that, maybe we restrict the number of bedrooms on it. So
Square foot.
square footage is right here is it.
Talk
Yep.
about density bonus, 800 or up, depending
Yep.
on.
Here, talk from other people.
So it'd probably be, so what do you think about a minimum size parcel that would be eligible for this? Should it be a certain number of lots?
Yeah.
Durham has a minimum of 10 acres.
Do they have a system like we're trying to do?
Yes, I think
They do. Wow. Well, let's steal their zoning ordinance.
10 is a pretty generic example, and I don't know that it really had a basis when we all made it up, but if you do 10 in the rural, you might want to do 5 in the rural residential, because that way it's 5 lots either way.
In fact, New Durham's pushing us. The one client I have in New Durham, he's got all kinds of road frontage, and he only wants 8 lots, big lots, and they're pushing him towards conservation subdivision.
Okay.
Boy.
That's what they want.
I remember back when I first joined the board, and one of the members says, "Over my dead body." Well, now he's talking about it. And he's still alive. And still on the board.
Scott, I have a question.
Surely.
We're talking about housing. We're talking about 100 acres here. We're talking about putting 20 houses here, for example. So each one of these people owns their lot, and they have the infrastructure put in, and then the city takes, or the town takes over, plows the roads and all that.
Well, not
No.
necessarily on one of these types of things. And the glory for that is to have these held closely and not go to the municipality, because the town, it costs them a fortune on these darn roads.
And that's why I
Well,
think New Durham's pushing it.
Yeah.
Who owns say all those houses are put on 10
They all own a
acres.
percentage.
Yeah.
Who owns the
They
rest?
all own a percentage.
Yeah.
So they're taxpayers then.
Sure, they're going to be taxpayers anyhow.
Little house is a taxpayer of
Yeah.
a larger chunk of property.
Yeah. And I think,
That large piece of property is in current use, and the tax income on it.
Goes into a conservation
Chump change.
easement.
Gotcha.
They put trails out there.
yeah.
They love that stuff.
Not much tax on it then. Okay.
There are different ways it can happen. It could happen that a farmer, or wants to keep as much of the field as possible, so wants the houses concentrated over on one side instead of strewn all around. Different ways it could be. It can be all the homes on one commonly owned lot managed by a homeowners association. It could be smaller lots and one big one. I think the idea is that the whole point is that you're trying to give the developer flexibility rather than cookie cutter.
One thing in New Durham, Paul, does, let's say they have a 2-acre zoning, 10 acres. So that means they could get 5 of those houses
You
condensed?
have, you
Or do
have
they
to
have
go and see how many you can maximize that lot.
on a
On
standard?
100 acres, if you can take out your wetlands, your steep slopes and all that, and that tells you how many lots you can get.
Right.
It
So
tells you
that's
can
the
only
density
get
you could,
20 lots, then that's all you can get.
That's where I was going with this. So yes, good, thank you.
And we get to that section later.
All right.
You want to say something, Paul? No. Well, should we back up and try to do the minimum lot size? Or should we wait till we get a New Durham?
Copy.
There are about
It has
50,
to meet the state regulations.
there are about
Go ahead.
50 examples off the top of my head, probably in New Hampshire. I mean, New Durham's one. I wrote the state's model. A lot of them are based on that. Some are based on the conservation design model. And it's my experience in that I used to draft this for you in line with my work on the master plan and my understanding of your zoning ordinance. So I've done that legwork for you and left it. And I'm, I think what I'm recommending is pretty solid, but some of these things that are in bolds and italics are, they're really policy decisions.
Right, and that's why I was thinking if we get a sample ordinance, maybe some of these will help us answer them.
Well, in the sample, it's, if you look at a model, it's probably gonna be 10 acres. But at the same time, it's gonna make sense to vary that with your district, because 10 acres is 5 homes in the rural district, but, right, your rural residential is 1 acre and rural is 2 acres. So I think it makes more sense to vary it between your zoning districts. To think about how many homes is worth the planning board's time providing this flexibility and having to think harder about the plan, really, a little bit.
So I think,
Yeah.
I think having a different size requirement for the two zones is definitely, because your residential rural is geared, that's where you want to do more intensive, if you will, residential development than in the rural zone.
Because that's set up for it already.
Right, and that's how we've got it layered out. And that the point is to go from a residential commercial zone to the residential rural, which is a little less, than to the rural, which is even less. So, 10 acres and 5 acres, if you can get the yield, and I know Ken used to use the term yield plan, which is basically what you talked about, taking out all the slopes, wetlands,
Right.
all that other stuff, and then you see what you've got left to work with. But I think a minimum of, Tara suggested 10 and 5. I think that's a good starting
It's a
point.
good start, yeah.
And the land has to support the septic loading.
Right, and it's always down to that and septic loading. Yes, absolutely.
Is this a developer's discretion then, whether he wants to build 10 houses here
Well,
or 10?
the reason we're looking at this, Mr. Bober, is the cost to build a road is just off the charts
Yeah.
these days. It's just ridiculous.
See, at present, we don't have this option, so you come in with 10 acres and you want to put 10 houses on it, and you can, but you still have to have, 1 acre lots for each one. And yeah, I know just what I've learned the last 10 years, that cost, the infrastructure, drainage, all that stuff is huge.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
It's crazy.
So, yeah, it gives a developer some incentive to not have to spend all that much money.
A little bit more flexibility.
So try to draw some more houses.
And another thing that you alluded to earlier, it's going to create a neighborhood where a sprawled out 2 acre subdivision isn't really the neighborhood that we probably all grew up in, more like compact neighborhood, you know?
It's gonna have a clubhouse probably,
Yeah.
place for
Sometimes.
dumpster.
Yep.
Everybody meets at the mailbox, because the mailbox, they're gonna have mailboxes at the door because it's gonna be a private road.
Starts a little village.
That's gonna, I don't think.
Neighborhood for a street.
Clubhouse on a 5-house
What's
subdivision.
that?
I don't think you'll see a clubhouse in a 5-house subdivision, which is.
No, but
No.
But if you got a big lot, you will.
Yeah, I don't know. The one I've been working on is 41 units and they don't have one either, but so then the next thing I did in taking out what you're talking about with the yield plan, and I based the 15% and 10% for roads, drainage and utilities based on measurements I've taken on subdivision plans in different density zoning districts. And I think it makes sense to give them these two options, that they either can do a preliminary plan that shows how many lots they could put in a conventional subdivision meeting your subdivision regulations, or you can offer them this percentage that they take out. You already take out steep slopes and wetlands, so they would just be taking out this percentage for roads and drainage.
That makes sense.
State will take out that well radius too.
Yep. Yes, they will.
Yeah.
And if it's multi-units, that radius probably goes to 300 feet versus 75.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It
It's big.
can be.
Yeah.
It can be.
You guys got really quiet.
Oh, we're talking about well radiuses come out of it also. But when the state looks at it, they want to make sure the well radiuses are not part of the
Part of the lot.
calculation.
Right.
They're usually part of the calculation, but you want to see that it works. I had to send a plan back recently because they had shared wells, but they had the protective radius as if they weren't shared wells. So, you want to see that on the plan, obviously.
Right.
Of course.
And then the big thing that you guys need to talk about a lot is whether you want to, we bounced this off last time of, might you want to offer a density bonus for smaller homes? And
Yeah.
this is something the master plan committee wasn't supportive of.
They were, or they were not?
They were.
They were. Okay.
Or is one idea. So, yeah. And then what should be the bonus, and what's a small enough home? Does it include a garage? There's a lot of questions for you guys to talk about in that one.
Have you seen it, whether I'm sure you've probably seen it both ways, if they included a garage or not, or if you just, said 800 square feet of living space and a garage would be extra. How have you seen that?
There are not a lot of examples with a density bonus for small footprints.
Okay.
This is something you'd be breaking not totally new ground, but it's not very common.
Now, the question would be, the state used to allow for a 1-bedroom unit, but they don't anymore. Everything has to be designed to 2-bedroom.
Right.
So where a 1-bedroom was 225 gallons a day, would we look at the whole lot as a picture of all of them going on there? Because 300 gallons a day for a 800 square foot house is a lot of loading.
Well, they still have the requirement for 1-bedroom. It has to be 225.
Okay, but I didn't think you could design. You have to have a 3-bedroom design though.
You're right. Yeah, the
Two-bedroom
minimum is a 3-bedroom design.
2-bedroom.
A
Two-bedroom.
design.
2-bedroom.
The
Yeah.
minimum is a 2-bedroom design.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 225 comes into play for ADUs frequently.
Okay.
That's what.
Yeah,
That's my most common thing with this accessory dwelling units, is that's where the 225 comes in.
Correct.
Because
it's on
a lot
to
of
another
1-bedroom.
Right. So if you had a 3-bedroom
top
house,
of.
450 plus you had 225 to that, then you got
Right,
it.
on top of the house itself.
Yeah. So we'll have to figure that part out where these are not ADUs.
Right.
So, and maybe, Rainey Pelletier or Thomas could come in and talk. Maybe not. He didn't call me back the last time I asked him to come
No,
here.
I think we've already had this discussion.
Go ahead, Mr. Bover.
But yeah, a bonus I think that's a definite plus, and why not? If we're looking to try to provide housing for people who you know, or who can only afford a smaller
Right.
place, or, you know, and
It's a
Why not?
perfect starter home or
Why not?
retirement home.
Right.
yeah, why not?
Yep. Mr. Bober?
Is a garage required?
No.
No, but we would probably allow it to be offered. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
in response to that particular question, I think there would be no need to require a garage. But if we made sure that things were sized, so someone came, you know, later on, as you improve your home, you want to add a garage, then there would be adequate area to do that without running into
the neighbor.
problems. You know, we just plan a footprint and allow this to start.
You may have to reduce setbacks too on these lots.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that, no doubt.
Yeah.
But having that option for a garage, as long as there's enough space for that garage, it can be done.
I think that, yeah, that's definitely something we want to, you know, build into.
Right, because then you would, right, you want to would definitely accommodate for that and
Yeah.
then.
Right.
not Any problems to, then
Right,
that
later
owner
on.
would have to later come on to the
Because-
ZBA
Especially-
because he's within.
That would-
If
that would-
back or
That
something.
would haunt the
yeah.
ZBA because if they all of a sudden,
Right.
nothing was there, I want a garage.
You should also have a percent
Yeah.
of lot coverage percent. I mean, you could sit there, have a nice small lot, small house. Some guy said, no, I want to put a garage on, and the garage is 3 times bigger than the house.
Yeah.
Well, you're only gonna offer this density bonus if there's covenants that restrict the footprint.
Right.
Yep.
That would be part of during the subdivision process, part of what we.
Right, I mean, that's why they're getting the density bonus. So, I mean, you're gonna wanna say X amount of square feet without a garage, X amount with a garage.
Okay,
Right.
I think that's a good idea.
Blessing on the design.
On the design.
Yeah, the whole,
That would be up to the developer that comes in and sees the surveyor. They will lay this out and they'll present it to the board. Either we say yay or nay.
I gave,
which
I
board?
gave
Planning board.
Jessica.
Okay, gotcha.
manual from New Hampshire, from the state of New Hampshire, that shows everything we just talked about.
Okay,
You did, and I was gonna make copies for everybody.
And it shows it how they do it. They'll go and they evaluate the land. They take all the wetlands, all the steep slopes out, and then they sit there. That's the first thing they do. Second thing is they look and see there's fields here, there's trees here. And then they go and just develop in those areas. Has nice little colored maps and everything.
good.
Okay, Tara.
So any feel for what the density bonus might be?
I would not have a clue. how to
That's a
go
loaded
there.
question at this point.
That would be, I would turn back to you and say, what have you seen, or what do you, what's your experience with density bonuses?
Does New Durham have a density bonus?
I'll look it over.
Okay.
We can look at some of those. They're gonna be tied to workforce housing rather than smaller footprints, because this is, as I said, a little bit new ground with the smaller homes. We're gonna see more of this. You're not gonna be alone in doing this, but
Actually, I would think that the density would probably be pretty easy to figure. I mean, where it says, you take the whole lot, you subtract this, that, and this is what you have left to work with. And you're gonna put as many houses in there as you can, right?
no,
Not always.
Well,
you have a unit.
I mean, you got setbacks, you got,
Agree.
and different things. So, I mean, so you figure out, okay, this is what a lot is, and then you see how many of these you put in that, and there's your,
Well, what this does, number two, is that, okay, so let's say I've got 10 acres to work with, or whatever, I've taken all that. So how many
10
houses?
acres left, you mean, after you
But
had 100,
would say
you
if,
got 10 left?
if you came in and said, all right, I want to do, there would be a bonus. If instead of saying, okay, you've got 10 acres, you can put 10 houses there, period. Well, if you wanted to put smaller houses, you might be able to put 12. That's the idea of the bonus, if I understand this correctly.
Yes.
The idea of the bonus is that to give you some incentive
To do
to
it.
do a smaller house that would be more affordable for newer, people starting or, first time buyers or retirement homes or whatever, that you don't have that.
Well,
You know-
isn't there two different horses? I mean, okay, that's one. So you're gonna give this guy a bonus if he does small houses, you're gonna give him this amount. But we're trying to figure density.
Yeah,
The density goes by the existing zoning, I think. That's what you need to understand. If it's in the rural zone, it's a 2 acre per thing. So you have 100 acres. If things were perfect, you could have 50 homes, but then you got to back out your wetlands and your steep slopes.
Right,
So let's
right.
say you end up with 25. So you can take and fandangle those 25 units and however you want to do them in pods or what have you.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So what it comes down to is, after you subtract it and get down to listing here, that tells you how many houses you could put in there because, you gotta have 1 acre per lot.
That established the
So-
density.
Now we have density. But now what you were saying is you're gonna go one further on that. You're gonna give a bonus
Correct.
for a smaller house.
right,
Yeah.
because you smaller footprint.
It's an incentive.
Like I'm saying, so that's, the density thing is a twofold.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Right.
I mean, you're saying, how would you figure the density? Well, that's how you
You
figure it.
you start
It
off with your
figures
basic
itself,
and then
yeah.
you have to modify it to whatever category you're going to fall
Right.
into.
That lot that you have.
You do it
my
for-
house lays out.
You do your initial yield, how many you could get. And then, if you're, okay, I want to do 800 square feet homes.
Mhm.
What kind of percentage do we allow you to get more homes?
Mhm.
That's
Right.
what she's talking about, with the density bonus.
And the whole incentive is to add 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, to
Or more.
create it,
They can
because
get
you
in there.
still want it, the developer obviously still wants it to be profitable for them. Sure.
Has to
But
be.
you still, we want it, absolutely. I mean, what's the point? If you're not gonna be, there's no point in doing it.
If they're making less money on the homes, they're saving money on the road.
Right.
Somehow it has to work out.
And yeah, but they're also building more homes.
Hmm.
So,
It's an incentive instead of building a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot home, it's an incentive to build a smaller, more affordable home. Multiple homes.
and allow a few more.
And instead of having these enormous places that a lot of people cannot afford.
Does your-
It'd be nice having the electrical guys do the same thing, kind of.
Yeah, it's almost like a cookie cutter type of
Yeah.
project, really.
So do-
What was that, Tara?
Does I'm looking at your inclusionary housing section and it says you may approve an increase of density, but I'm not seeing a percentage. Does it have one that I'm just missing? Or is it open-ended?
Yeah,
I'm just not seeing a percentage, because I was looking at it to see if it might make sense to use the same one, but I just can't find one.
I don't,
I mean, you could do that, but I'd rather see you have a set number, like something like 20%.
a set number, in my opinion, would be easier to work with.
Yeah,
instead of trying to pull something out of the ether.
right. I mean, something like 20% is probably typical for, like, if it was workforce housing.
So are we gonna use workforce housing when we're trying to get this?
No, we're not going to use that term.
No,
Not using that. I'm not using
It's all
it.
over the paperwork.
no.
No, we're not using it.
I don't see a percentage on that either.
Well, I would throw 20% out there and we'll see what else we find if we look at some other examples. I think 6 houses instead of 5, if we're looking at the 5 acres or 10 acres, makes sense for starters.
Okay.
I think you guys need to look at some home designs online maybe and think about square feet. How,
Yeah. I mean,
1,000 square feet to 1,200.
Plus you can utilize lofts too. And that's because if you call it a loft, you can have different headroom and I think would your life safety egress change with a loft? I'm not sure that.
I don't think we're small enough to be in the tiny home codes that you're talking about.
Well, no, I'm just talking about a loft. You know, I mean, there's.
I think you only are exempt from the headroom if it's qualifies as a tiny home. I forget what the square feet is, but it's a lot smaller than 800.
Well, it's 400, I think.
Okay, so then you'd have to be 400 or smaller to qualify for that smaller headroom in the loft.
Okay.
Those exemptions are only for tiny homes.
And I would like to think that we could also offer, if someone does super energy efficiency, like they provide solar panels and things of that nature. I've said a million times that the state allows, like on the islands, electric toilets, gas toilets, whatever the case may be, but not on a primary installation, which is frustrating, and it doesn't make sense to me. And plus they have gray water gardens now that they can put the right foliage in there and chew up all the soaps and what have you in the corn.
We could be making a lot of different.
There's something like coming?
No,
No.
There's a lot that we could,
Yeah.
the state could take some serious
And,
time.
and they're not interested in doing it all.
Well, I think at some point in the future, it's gotta change.
It's got to, because 1972 just doesn't cut it anymore. That was 50 years ago.
I mean, even Maine is less restrictive than New
Right.
Hampshire.
Oh, much so.
Yeah.
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 When I did the laundromats, I had to prove to them of what the usage was on these things. And I mean, they wanted 500 gallons a day per machine.
Jesus. It has to change.
Yeah.
It's way outdated.
And the only reason they do it now is Randy told me, challenge us and we'll make a decision.
I think sometimes you guys aren't close enough to your microphones, but maybe that's on purpose.
Nobody's ever said they have a hard time hearing me. Okay, Tara, what do you move on? Well, you're gonna use 20% now just to get us beyond
Yeah,
this?
just we'll put that in as a placeholder. So do you want the models we always put in no case will lots smaller than something be permitted, but I don't know if you really need that. I mean, it's gonna be governed by whether it's on water or needs wells, the septic. We already talked about the
What if-
well
what if-
protective radius. I think
what if
that
you
kind of
follow-
determines the size.
What if you follow the mobile home scenario? Because they have 16 by 70s, and that's a hell of a big house, and they're allowed on 10,000 square feet currently.
You may also have 0 lot line developments in this. Right?
Yeah, I think that would be a problem. Yeah,
I-
because
I
there'll
totally
always be an
agree.
argument. It's bad enough an argument with the pins in place.
At 10 feet between houses.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Said I dealt with that in Florida, the 0 lot line, and they just, you got 10 feet between houses.
Well, so
But they got
not
a 40-foot
necessarily,
lot, a 30-foot wide house. One side of the house is right on the lot line.
there,
You got a 10-foot setback between on there, and then you got a house again.
so I think we're talking about something different. You're talking about not having setbacks, and I'm talking about all of the homes being on one common piece of land,
Right, okay, yeah, I understand.
Now you're talking condo.
right?
In essence, yeah, really, how else would you do it?
Because if you got to divide ownership somehow.
I think, I mean, often, because I've seen it done, I've seen condominium developments done both ways. It generally comes out to be a better project when you don't require them to have individual lots under each building.
How you decide who's gonna mow what?
The condo association mows all of it. Then,
What's that one in Wyndham that you told me
Oh,
about?
no, it's in Bridgeton.
Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's, I don't know, well, when I've seen them they advertise it as a unit. I have not seen how
It's
the
a
land.
lot. I saw the plan. Each
Okay.
one is a separate lot.
Okay,
But they're also on town sewer, I think.
Right. Yeah. But that's a heck of a project. It really is.
Nice house plans too.
So what are your thoughts on that? Do you want to require
I
individual
personally like
lots?
Lot lines because I worry about the neighborhood situation because, I mean, even when you have a pin there, sometimes argue about where things are.
Well, when you don't have lot lines, it's all owned by the homeowners association and and you have common areas for recreation. It's all common area.
Basically like a condo.
Yeah, basically.
Well, now that developer that wasn't gonna, everything was gonna cheap, now he's gotta mow everybody's grass.
No, the home.
homeowner
at that
association
point,
does
the
it.
homeowners association bears that cost.
Can you guys talk into your mic?
We are.
You are?
Back when maybe mine's not even working.
It's working. You just gotta sit close.
Something's not good with some of the audio.
So, okay, so the homeowners association, so that's like condo.
It's a very similar, yeah, it would be very similar to a condo association.
My son-
It's like the mics went off and I'm hearing you from something else.
What was that, Tara?
It's as if the mics went off and I'm hearing you another way.
Okay.
Could some of them be off?
No, they should all be working.
They're all working.
They don't get switched off.
They're all working. I wonder if the volume's up, because usually, I mean, it's like this far away,
Yeah, something just changed. That's all. Like, you're very quiet.
to really get there to be heard.
Okay, we got about 20 minutes here, people. Can you hear me?
Well, just try to yell a little bit. So you're talking about whether you want to require individual lots or could they be on commonly owned land?
You know,
I think we need to investigate that.
well, why not let the market take us there? If someone wants to propose a condo project, well, do a condo project. If someone wants to do,
Condos aren't allowed in the rule, but yeah.
So let me
Fix
explain
that.
one thing. You can't control whether it's condominium or not. I can show you a plan that I just had on my desk a couple months ago in another town that's individual lots, but it's a condo project. And then there's another one that's not, that's irrelevant of how the ownership is. The condo project can be either way.
So you can still have lot lines. Still have the lot sizes and lot lines and still have it like an association.
Again,
Even
Is that what I'm
even
understanding? That's what I'm
condominiums
asking.
have lot lines.
Hmm?
Even condominiums have lot lines.
Well, they don't all, like,
No, but they have limited common and common.
it can be just the footprint of the building.
right,
Still a lot line.
that's right.
It's still a line of ownership.
Yes, but I don't think that's what we're talking about.
And we also need, this is jumping ahead, we need to do if something's within 20 feet of each other, we got to do the non-flammable siding and
Right,
things of
well,
that
that-
nature.
Fences.
Huh?
Fences?
No, I'm talking about cement board
No, no,
siding.
I'm talking
She's
fences.
talking fences.
Fences
Yeah,
around
what?
property. Is good
That
or
would be
bad?
in the homeowners association
Yeah.
rules.
Well, I think you want to have the fire chief review any plan that comes in
right.
and
Absolutely, they would
and
anyway.
have a minimum distance between buildings. 20 feet is a pretty typical one.
So where,
So what do you guys want to do and what do you want me to do?
well, I mean, how do we determine what would be the smallest acceptable lot size? And you have some ideas that, be different if it's got public water supply, or if they're different on each well, because then we've got radiuses and all these other things. So that's sort of it's not, I won't say moving target, but it has to be a sliding scale of some kind.
Well, do
I
you
think
need,
it-
do you need to have it?
We need to have what?
Yeah, do we need to say that we have a small acceptable lot size? Because the yield, if you do a yield plan, where you look at it, it's gonna determine the amount of units. So then do we want minimum separation? You know, we want to
Yeah.
say, okay, that instead of having a lot size, there's a minimum separation between structures
Yes.
for light, air,
Yeah.
additions, whatever. I think that's more, to me, that sounds more easier to work with than saying a specific lot size.
I agree, because
be
then you could have them all on one lot too.
What was that, Tara? I'm sorry.
I agree, because then they could all be on one lot.
Right.
I think, I mean, in my mind, the more flexibility you can give the developer, the better project results, as opposed to trying to shoehorn something in
I
rings.
see it also as a community water system, because we can't punch all these holes in
Right.
and get a septic system in.
Right.
I mean, it may or may not be. I have one that's pretty tight, and 3 or 4 homes share a well. 2 homes each share a leach field. They each have their own septic tank. They're pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the radius is gonna have to be on the lot coming up. Have you heard that coming up on septic designs?
They have to be on the lot. If not, you have to get an easement now, not a well release.
Okay, you have to
An
get,
easement?
An easement has to be allowed.
You better get it from your neighbor.
yeah,
Saying.
Yeah.
you better buy him a
Like
turkey.
before, you
Christmas
just
keeps
did a-
Or
getting
you just
better.
recorded a well release and your neighbor never knew.
Right.
Now you have to notify your neighbor and
Well,
get an easement.
that would be, on something like this, that would be built into the subdivision
Correct.
process.
Yeah.
That would have to be
Right.
built into the subdivision process that, you have to,
Right,
in this case, but having a common lot with the houses on it solves that radius issue of getting your neighbor to give you permission for the radius to be on their lot, because you're all on the same lot.
Well, again, you're gonna fall, when you're dealing with this, I think you're gonna be under the condominium lot loading under the state regulations for
Okay.
septic. That's a whole different thing. You
Oh,
have
we'll
to
just
follow
have to-
different kind of calculations.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be the responsibility of the developer to bring in the calculations that meet the
Sure.
state and local requirements, and then
absolutely.
go from there.
If you don't meet state, you're not gonna meet town.
Right. So,
The state requirements right now, they're supposed to be changing. Right now, if my 41 condo units, that each 3 or 4 share a well, they don't consider it a public water supply, and that's hopefully gonna be changing, because they're all on the condominium land, right? So it really, in my mind, was a public water supply, but they can't regulate it that way yet. They're trying to change those rules.
Are they trying to change this for the whole lot and not each well has 5 houses on it, so it doesn't be considered a public well? You got 5
It's
houses
all
on
on one lot.
well,
That project I was talking about is all on one lot.
but that whole lot has over 25.
right, but if it's individual wells, if they're going to be changing it, I'm just going to wait for the change.
Yeah, well, I mean, those changes take a long time, but hopefully.
No
it'll
point, no
happen.
point in, or see where they're going with the proposed changes so that we can look at it going ahead too.
Well, a lot of towns, if you have something that's gonna be on the ballot, and I say you have already started zoning changes, and I bring in a subdivision app, now I've got,
You've got to go by
new stuff.
what's proposed until it's voted affirmative or
I
negative.
don't know if that goes with the state now, if they've already had public meetings on that.
No, I don't think they have.
That's a good point.
I haven't even seen the rules change. It was just, I was told that they're working on it when I called to ask if it was a public water supply.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have the monitoring of those wells put in the condo docs. Because one person could put something awful down the drain and, send somebody else's well.
Right. Okay.
Then the last piece is just the kind of boilerplate language about that we have for protecting the open space area.
Yeah, that's,
But so what do you guys want to do with this and what do you want me to do for the next meeting? I think you all need to look at some home sizes and decide what's a reasonable
yeah.
size to limit it to.
Yes.
Do you know of other towns? You said there's not a lot of towns that have done this where the, sliding scale for the size of home, but do you know of some of the other towns? Man, I can't even talk.
I'll ask my friend at New Hampshire Housing.
Dover's got one right now with small houses.
The only thing different for them is they have probably municipal water and sewer.
Maybe not. I'll have to look it up.
Was it Dover that? I think it was Dover or Durham did one a number of years ago. It was a development. It was over on the river, on the Oyster River. And that was geared more towards student housing, but it was individual dwellings. But
That might be still going on.
okay.
I mean, a logical next step would be for me to reach out to New Hampshire Housing anyway and get,
And get
Get-
whatever New Durham has for an ordinance.
I'll get that.
Okay, he'll get that.
All of them.
I'll get Dover's too.
You want to send those to her? Send those to Tara?
Yeah, we'll send them
I'll
to
send
Jessica.
them to
Jessica and she
Yeah,
can
you
distribute
send
them.
sure, yeah, okay.
No Durham ordinance on that.
Yeah.
Tara keeps asking what we want her to do. Should we be finding now a new term for workforce housing?
Conservation subdivision, is that what we were leaning towards?
Well,
I think-
no,
I think
we're
we're-
leaning towards flexible zoning.
right, we're gonna stick with flexible zoning and the inclusionary zoning. She was talking about the inclusionary zoning section earlier, and that also talks about workforce housing in the inclusionary zoning.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's
flexible
in
zoning, I think
there.
that's a good word.
Changing it to
have that in there.
Flexible housing.
Yeah, I'd rather see you keep this simpler and just be saying, we'll give you a little bonus if you keep the houses small.
Okay.
Yep.
That's easier.
Sounds better.
All right, so I'll reach out to New Hampshire Housing and see what they have to say. And you guys look at house sizes.
Yes.
Yep.
It's easy.
Yep. We can do that.
And then you're kind of getting into the zoning amendment time frame. So we probably don't want to wait too long for the next meeting.
Well, since you mentioned that, let's move to that. So we're pretty well done on the,
Would September 12th be the next date if we kind of go with the second and fourth Mondays?
that's a Monday. It's a Monday after Labor Day.
I think there's a selectman meeting that night.
Oh, yeah, the Monday after Labor Day, yeah.
I believe that's a selectman meeting. It's both.
Well, we can't throw the selectmen
know
out
it
of
is.
their meeting room. I said, we can't throw the selectmen out of their meeting room.
No, I could be wrong on that. I think it could be.
There is a selectman meeting on the 12th.
It is
On the 12th.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Well, what about the 13th? Tuesday.
CIP meeting.
Oh, it's gonna run into a lot of headaches here. 'Tis the season.
Right, that's why getting off the schedule makes it tough because those darn holidays, right?
Yeah. The 7th? What's that look like, Jess?
Master Plan Committee.
Okay.
13th? Oh, you said the Tuesday's 13th.
Let's
No,
go the
14th?
13th or 14th?
You said the 13th is CIP, right?
No, so how about-
I have other meetings on most Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays.
All right, when are you free next?
How about
Tara?
Wednesday, the 14th?
I have another town.
Okay,
Really, I blocked out the second and fourth Mondays for you guys, unless you could meet at 4 o'clock someday.
It's tough.
I can always meet at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I can. Not a problem for me.
Really, if we're looking at evenings, I
No,
just think that,
4 o'clock could work.
want to be the,
I can make it work.
You talk to your boss, Scott.
I will.
4 o'clock is.
I can make it work.
Actually.
On which day?
On the 12th?
Well, that means I just stay here.
Think of the gas you're gonna save.
Would that be-
Can I bring my supper?
Are you saying 4 o'clock on the 12th, Tara?
that would be great.
That could work, and we definitely, we would have to wrap up by,
6
you know,
o'clock. Time?
5:30-ish.
Okay.
Yes, before the
Perfect.
That way
selectmen
it's
start.
because the selectmen have a meeting at 6.
But we'd we'd hopefully be able to get a little further on the flexible zoning.
At 4.
Yeah, we should offer a public input when we're done here too. Thank you. We'll do some public input.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'm good with that one.
Do we want to pencil in the 26th at 6 so that we just all have it open? If we need it.
26th.
At 6.
That's not one of your, that's not the selectmen meeting. You're the week before that.
The
right?
26th is also a selectmen's meeting.
How'd they get on the wrong schedule from us?
What's that?
Probably doing budget.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's gonna be a
that's-
lot of that coming up.
We're in budget
committee
season
meetings
again.
coming up.
All right, well, let's just see where we get on the 12th then.
Okay.
The only other way would do that at 4 o'clock again.
Right.
Works for me.
Would that be, would that 4 o'clock on the 26th be okay for you, Tara?
Yep, perfect.
What about everybody else?
Good.
The 26th. So the
That's the next
12th,
one?
yeah, the
No,
12th.
No. Additional one after the
After
12th.
the
Yeah.
next one.
Oh,
The 12th and the
26th, what time?
26th, both
4
at 4
p.m.
o'clock.
Both meetings would be at 4. The 12th.
I can
and the
make it work.
26th.
I'm just kind of push it a little bit because stuff has to go from you to the ZAC, to the planning board, to public hearing.
All right, so are we ready to push the short-term rental onto the ZAC
I
committee for
think we
tomorrow night?
beat it hard enough.
Otherwise, we're running out of time
I
at
think
that
we
Right.
point.
should. I think
Yeah.
we should. I
Yep.
think it's ready.
Yep.
I think we beat it to hell already.
Making sure.
I've been talking about it for over a year. Seriously.
Yeah.
It's been over a year. It's time to come up with a decision.
Yep. Okay, at this point, any public input, Mr. O'Brien, Mrs. O'Brien? Any input? No, because you are the public tonight. Okay. Anything else for the good of the organization?
Thank you, Tara.
You guys hit everything that you was concerned about. You know, the concern was about the septic.
All right, have a good Labor Day weekend, everybody.
All right, thank you.
We're good, Tara. Thank
Very
you.
much,
All
Tara.
right, good night.
Yeah, the concern was the septic systems. The other concern was the amount of people, which, you know, like you said, Paul, you can't really control. I mean, we looked out last week when it was, 101 outside. I couldn't even go in the water because next door had so many people over there that it looked like a flotilla. I mean, I had to go next door to go swimming. So, we're in a unique situation where we are.
Yeah.
Because it's such a condensed
So
area.
tight.
Right.
And those people, when they get there, they stand there and they go like, what the hell did I get myself into? And Vince was so nice last week that these people were really respectful of our property. Vince took them out for a ride in his 1929 Chris Craft.
There you go.
Guy had a smile like this.
Yeah, he hasn't offered that to us.
Your schedule's pretty full.
I know.
Yeah, it is.
But the people that respect the property, they understand, and they've actually come over to me and apologize, saying, we know what you're dealing with. So you're hitting the right track.
It's gonna be a work in progress. And it's gonna take time.
It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, well, you know what you're dealing with when you're dealing with that. Like Vince was trying to express about not having it on the you know, the comments. Some people don't have it on Airbnb, so what they do is they don't publish the bad comments. This is what's happened to that one side of us. Everybody that goes there say they're gonna write them a bad review. That bad review never shows up.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you. Be a busy September. I think I'll be in here for the next week.
It's gotta be hot. Well, say